Good evening. I'm Miss Jill, and this is In the Know. We talked about a lot of things that have been going on in October. Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Something we haven't really touched on. October is National Domestic Violence Awareness Month.
Yes.
In the time it took me to say that, approximately 20 people have been abused by their partner. So if you think of it like that, it kind of really puts it into perspective. So with that being said, it equates to 10 million men and women per year. That's kind of shocking. So we just wanted to highlight that a little bit. Also, this is very interesting. Indiana ranks, so they have what they call like a domestic violence rate. Mm-hmm. Out of all the states in the U.S.,
right,
Indiana is the 5th worst
state for domestic violence?
Yes. Increase of 181%.
Since when?
Since 2021.
Since COVID?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Right.
So that's staggering, especially because we've talked about how, COVID had impacted or was going to.
Right.
So just wanted to bring that up first. As we know, domestic violence is a form of violence.
Right.
So we're going to talk about that a little bit. What is violence?
What is violence?
When we think about violence, so I have the definition,
okay,
and then I want your take on what you think violence is, if you think it goes with the definition. Webster says that violence is the intentional use of physical force or power, threatened or actual, that either results in a high likelihood of injury, death, or psychological harm, or does result. That is the actual definition.
Right.
So what do we think violence is?
I think it's exactly that. I think it's a use of force or power to bring harm or hurt to somebody. I mean, it could be either physical, as it said, it could be mental, or it could be emotional. And with domestic violence, too many of us focus on the physical and not the emotional or the verbal or all of those things. Violence is just when you assert your power or your authority or your angst or your malice against another person or being.
I agree. Being in a domestic violence situation for 10 years, it didn't necessarily have to be physical. He didn't have to put his hands on me. Just his words, the intimidation, the what ifs, and figuring out that, I couldn't live without him. That's how the words that he used, manipulation.
Right.
So I totally agree. It doesn't have to be physical. It could be something that's so overpowering that for some it cripples you where you think you can't get out of the situation.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, it's my turn?
Yes.
I guess
it's my turn. Well, I agree with it. It is. Violence is violence, regardless of how you do it, mentally, emotionally. It's just if you want to oppose your will on somebody. Now, that's. I've seen it from employees that I had I used to manage, but I look at it like. You can have domestic violence any type of way,
right?
Mentally and emotionally,
right? But you stated that we're fifth, and that's I would say that's on par for Indiana because Indiana is in the top either 5 or 6 manufacturing states, and I know I'm not blaming it all on drug or substance abuse, but that's one of the problems that can attribute to domestic violence is the high use of substance abuse and the dependency of substance that Indiana suffers with on a regular basis. I think they're up in the top 10 of opioid use. So you look at all of these factors, not saying those are isolated or the only factors, but those are some of the factors that also play into domestic violence because the drug situation and it's both partners could be on drugs and they get into it and then there's a report and there's children involved, so there's a lot of other factors, but those are 2 main factors that I know in the time frame that you were talking, that could be heavy contributors to the Indiana being fifth among the domestic violence states.
I'm actually shocked that it's so high because of everything else that Indiana's trying to do, even here in Fort Wayne, with the beautification, everything new. We're top, for cities to raise families, which is kind of contraindicating of the domestic violence. And then those things those individuals that say sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt.
Words hurt just as much, if not more.
Right. So, you kind of wonder where our state is, and is this political?
Well, have you ever heard what look good on the outside is not always good on the inside?
Yes.
So that's one of the biggest things. Like, I look at it from a standpoint of I had an employee that I literally had to beat her boyfriend up at my job because he actually grabbed her by her throat and slammed her against the wall.
So violence beget violence.
So I mean,
violence do beget violence.
I mean, at what point do you sit back and let somebody get?
I agree. I'm agree with you on that wholeheartedly, especially a woman that is,
I'm a firm believer in if you got to put your hands on your mate,
leave them.
Y'all don't need to be together.
Right.
I mean, I could argue with you, I could fuss with you all day long, but to put my hands on you, I was always taught never put my hands on a woman. I even installed that into my son wholeheartedly at no cost. You put your hands, you walk away. I mean, if you got at gunpoint or knife point and you got to defend yourself, but other than that, man, your words can't bother me.
Right.
Right.
And, when we're talking about what it is, the next question is why? Why does violence even exist? And I think this is a deep question. I don't think there really is an answer to it.
It is an answer.
Well, I think there are levels.
But I don't think they're going to be. I don't think they're going to be the same. So
and it also goes into the depths in which you want to look at it. There's always a simple answer to most things, and the simple answer is why is there violence? Because there are people. That's the simple answer. Yes, there are levels and there's complexities to that, but the simple answer and the true fact of the matter is that there's more than two people on this planet.
Right.
So that's why there's violence.
Right.
I mean, from the beginning of time, you have to look at it from the beginning of time as violence. It was fighting. So, you asked that question, but I'm going to ask you this question. Somebody break into your house. Are you not going to defend yourself?
Absolutely.
Okay, so it's a time it's a time for everything under the sun.
Yes.
So at some point, yes, you're gonna have to use violence. You're gonna have to take care of your surroundings.
just like the animals did.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it is what it is. I mean, I protect my peace like I protect my kids. You can attack my peace, I'm gonna attack you.
Yeah.
But isn't there a difference between protecting your home and just being violent for no apparent reason? I mean, look at the book of Genesis. You had Cain and Abel. You had Adam and Eve, right? So there's not a lot of people. I mean, they're brothers. There was no need for jealousy, even at that time. I think when you're protecting your home, that's different because you're protecting your home and someone has invaded your space. But to be violent and create violence for no reason, like me take my knife or my gun out and just shoot you, and you haven't done anything to me.
That's the problem. Here's the problem.
Okay.
Most of us, a lot of us, think like that. The problem is when you say violence wouldn't exist if humans didn't exist. Just like violence is and was an animal behavior, it is also a human behavior.
Right.
So that's why we talked about resources and mental health. Like a normal person who is not mentally ill, and by mentally ill, I don't just mean schizophrenia. I mean
bipolar and nothing
any
like that.
kind of to do that kind of thing. You have to have some kind of yes. But the problem is we're always going to have people. You talked about the things they're doing in the city.
I have a question though.
You can make everything look pretty, like you said. You can make sidewalks, you can make trees, but if you are not addressing the root of the issue, you know what's wrong. Why don't all of these other people know that it's wrong if you know.
I have a question that may be a little in disagreement with what you said about mental illness. I do understand that there are some mental illnesses that people can't control, that they have violent outbursts. But lack of conscience, that's not a mental illness.
No, not at all.
Right. That's a moral thing.
That's a moral
and so I think it's more lack of conscience than it is of mental illness. Because if I don't have a conscience, then I can do anything to any of you that I want to do, and it's not going to bother me. And I think that's the difference between where you was talking about, Mildred, in defense. It's all violence, but then there's a malice violence, and then there's a violence. As Eric said, there's a reason for everything. But you're talking about the malice in the violence, whereas, I just don't have a conscience.
Yes.
I can live and sleep with doing anything to anybody, and it's not going to bother me. So that's a moral thing. That's a belief thing. That is something that where the world is, as you say.
That's where the world is at.
That's where the world is at, and we've continued to migrate to that fashion because we don't have strong belief systems anymore. We don't have strong faith-based. We go by what we think, and we go by what governments put in front of us. We go by laws. So it's a moral complex where morality. I understand you cannot police morality, but we're not even teaching morality anymore either. So
I mean, you're right. We're not teaching morality, so you can't police something that you're not teaching.
Right.
And the biggest thing I would say about violence, and you said a normal person has to be normal. In whose eyes they have to be normal in?
Yeah, what is normalcy?
So normalcy, in terms of for instance, I have a diagnosis. So I don't think I have a normal mental state because I know that I have I know there are things going on with me. As opposed to, but mine is treated. Right. So when I say a normal person, I mean somebody who is being treated. I would say not normal in terms of mental illness is somebody who, I've seen go through before, to have all of those outbursts and the violence and everything, but not treat themselves.
Now, not saying that those are excusable.
Absolutely.
But I think even in the eyes of society, in the courts of appeals or the population or whatever you want to say, they will still try them. But they would find reasons why they could not control. They would give, and I'm not excusing it.
Reason of insanity.
Yeah, or whatever
all the
they're
time.
Gonna put into it. So they're gonna bring them. But what I'm saying, Jill, is. And I respect the mental health part, but here's the problem. Because I was not taught, I was not raised, I was not, and then if I was taught violence. I was taught, I saw my dad, and I'm figuratively speaking, I saw my dad beat my mom. I saw her beat him every day. So what am I gonna learn? I'm gonna learn whenever I get a mate, that's what's supposed to happen. I'm supposed to beat that person because that's what it is. And it's the lack of moral, the lack of upbringing, the lack of things, and it's too many times. And like I say, the media, everything makes everything look so easy and so good, and the conscience is so I mean, we tell people, oh, I killed so such and such, and I don't know if y'all. I'm a music person, and I don't know if y'all know what drill music is. Drill music is a music where that's all they talk about is murders. Chicago drill music, they actually telling on themselves about I killed so and so. They're putting this in his songs and things like that, and it's a bragging right. It's a bragging right that they have done these things. So, and that is nothing, you can't say they're mentally ill because they are functionally moving every day, but they're bragging to, I killed this many people, this person got shot here, this person, and they're giving graphic details, and then there's, and the media is playing this over and over again, and it's being glorified, so that must be what is hot. And
we're going to get to that. Hold on to the media. That's way down here, and we're going to get...
I'm finna, and that goes to your question when you said normalcy. In your eyesight, something is normal. In my eyesight, something else is normal.
Yeah.
So you cannot sit back and say, okay, it's not normal because they have this mental disease or this mental, because in their life, that's normal.
Yeah,
that's normal.
That's the point.
So it's not the point to say, okay, it's okay to hurt somebody or just to blast out on somebody, but it's also the thought process of your eyes might see it as unnormal. My eyes gonna see it as normal because how we both grew up and where we both came from.
And that brings me back, and then we have to move forward. That brings me back to the next question was, how does it impact? The reason I said resources and mental health are so important, because where violence comes from many places, but most commonly it comes from fear. It comes from anger. If I fear you're going to take someone away from me, and I come out of fear and I shoot you, or anger, or like you said, an upbringing. So if you watched your father do that to your mother and you never got any help, but you just went on to do.
Right.
If you had a resource, that is where the resources come into play. So no, mental health is not an excuse, but as Mildred was stating, all of these different things that are being put into place, what you said is a perfect example of how it impacts us, the youth.
I have a question. What about the child who is already committing violent acts towards their family? So, for instance, a rich family with a great upbringing, great morals, providers in the community, go to church, high level of society, both parents giving the children what they need, what they want, and this child continues. The parents can't sleep at night because this child is waking up. And I'm not talking about a teenager, I'm talking about a 6-year-old.
Right.
Probably because they gave them what they want.
What about a 5-year-old? You know what I'm saying? That they're just committing crimes or say that they want to kill, and that's all they think about, or kill animals at such a young age, and they don't see that. That's not part of their repertoire for their family.
They see it.
I'm saying,
you take that boat to that boy, you grab him on the back.
Girl, it actually,
spare the rod, spoil the
that
child.
happens all the time. Not in my house.
What you say?
If you're a girl or a boy, I will bust you to the white meat, because at the end of the day, I'm not going to hit my child and putting me in time out. I give that child more time to think about what he's going to do. What's his next move? I'm finna nip it in the bud right now. This is what you want to do? Every time you do it, I'm going to bust you to the white meat until you understand this is not how you move.
Hey, man, you heard him. So we're going to go ahead and watch a video so we can take a little breather. And this video talks a little bit more about what we were talking about. So let's go ahead and watch that.
The question often arises, why are people violent? In fact, why do we need these laws in the first place? Why doesn't everybody just live peacefully and happily ever after? And that's because, whether we like it or not, in human society and throughout the animal kingdom, the relationships among any social creatures, whether these are ants in a colony, wolves in a pack, birds in a flock, baboons in a troop, or humans in a 5th grade class, it's based on some combination and some conflict between cooperation and conflict. Social creatures need each other. We band together for mutual good, but within that group, there are times when we're going to compete with one another for resources that we think are scarce. It's food, it's shelter, weapons, mates, money, bling, whatever it may be, where both cooperating and conflicting with one another. And so, over the course of history and even prehistory, different individuals evolve different strategies for doing this. Some people, as we know, are sort of pleasant and easy to get along with, and they're very cooperative. And others seem to take great pleasure in preying on other people and exploiting other people. So some individuals may be violent because their family tree has selected for the kind of brain wiring that acts first and asks questions later. They may be somewhat impulsive. They may be somewhat irritable. There's a range of neuropsychological, hormonal, physical factors that go into determining why some people are more violent than other people. And like anything else, life is a bell curve. Any trait you can imagine, think of any human trait, height, weight, strength, athletic ability, musical talent, whatever it is, there are going to be some people on one end that are going to have very little of that trait. There are going to be some people on the other end that are going to have way too much of that trait, and most of us are going to be somewhere in between.
Yeah,
Somewhere
I
in
feel that,
between.
yeah, and I think that's most of us, and where he said that, but and he brought up a point, where I say there's more than two people. Yes, our outward or main goal is to be a community, to help each other, to live together, to be in commune that we can get along. But that's not always the case. There's reasons why we find to commit violence. We over a piece of bread. Who's going to get the last piece of bread? Who's going to, if it's a scarcity of food, tell me, Jill, you're going to be passive. If you and three people and you see the last piece of bread, you're going to be passive.
Honey, I do that in the Thanksgiving line. I don't even need to be worried about the last piece of bread.
But you understand what I'm saying,
Absolutely.
and that's what he's saying. There's always some surrounding factors that would contribute to violence, but we have to gauge, pick, choose, whatever, what is going to incite us to violence.
Right.
Violence is, it's in us.
Right, and it's a choice. Like, are you a violent person or
Yes.
was it a violent choice? Because it's not the same.
Right.
So,
I mean, that's the way he was putting it is like you in survival mode.
And most of us are every day.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, if you are in survival mode, honestly, I'm always we all are in survival mode. It's all about how you maneuver in survival mode.
Right.
So, I mean, I'm not to sit back and I'm not like you was talking about three people in a piece of bread. Go ahead and have that piece of bread because I'm at the point I'm at a survival mode. So guess what? I learned how to make bread, or I learned how to maneuver and figure out what I can eat. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
In a tight situation. So it's how you maneuver in survival mode. You don't have to always go into violence in survival mode.
No,
But
you don't. But that's
Right.
that's our default. Yeah, that's
Right.
our default. Yeah.
we're going to flip the script and we're going to go on the other side because, as we've said, where there's good, there's evil. Where there's evil, there's good. Let's talk about good. So, the last thing that you heard about that was good, Mildred, was what? Real quick.
The last thing that I heard that was good.
Yep, real quick. Quicker than that. Okay. Anybody? Anyone?
Oh, on social media.
That was too late.
You open that. It's a big question.
Anything good?
Because I could sit back and say what I found out today was good was, hey, we getting a raise.
Exactly.
that's
Nope,
good.
that's
We
perfect.
are?
That's perfect.
That's
perfect.
I mean, you can if you want to break it down, break it down.
No,
That's
it's
just-
not being broke down. That was the intention.
What
So
was
what was yours?
Somebody on social media giving
Okay.
to the homeless.
Okay, so
That's something like that.
so let's
too.
talk about the good. Like what is good?
It's just it's that. I mean, good is one of those things you don't have to explain. It's like right and wrong. You know what's right. You know what's wrong. You know what's good. You know what's evil. Good is the kindness, the grace, all of that is the goodness.
I saw two young black men stop their car on social media and carry a lady across the street. She was with a walker, and then one of the gentlemen took the walker, and you don't see that a lot.
Yeah, right.
The media is all about what's the evil, the
Yeah.
violence, the wars, the negativity. But when I saw that, I could watch that all day.
Yeah.
Something like that feel good, that there's humanity, that there's people that still care for other people. You know, I love that good feel kind of story. So
Right, right, and there is good. I mean,
There's good.
there's a lot of good. And why do we need? We say, why does the evil exist or the violence exist? Why does the good, the same thing, why does the good exist? How does it impact us when things are good around us? How does it make us feel?
I mean, if you got a peaceful surrounding, that's the biggest thing. That's what makes a person. Well, I'm just gonna say me personally. Your surroundings. So if you have a peaceful surroundings, now you can respond to it in a better light. You can be you can be happy, you can be joyful, and you can. A lot of people relate good and happiness into money, and not. That, I mean, you can be the brokest person in the world and still
Do good.
Exactly.
and do good. I mean, you see all kinds of things on social media that people really don't pay attention to. Like my guy was handing out money to the homeless. One homeless man took the money he gave, bought a lot of food,
and
I saw that.
and handed it out.
He went to the liquor store, but they assumed he was going to buy liquor, but he bought snacks.
He bought snacks and was handing it out to everybody that in their little
Community.
their little community. So my man looked at him like, "Wow, we thought you was gonna buy," and you came and fed everybody that's in the community. He was like, "Yeah, if one eat, we all eat."
Well, yeah.
I mean, and that's to me. That's what the world is missing out
Absolutely.
on. Because if a homeless person have enough sense to say, okay, I got some money where I can eat, and I got a whole community around here that I'm around every day, and they need to eat, let's feed everybody.
Right, and that's the good. That is so good.
You know, it's funny, and that E said that, and we look at the bad of a person, but we don't look at the good intent.
Right.
It's funny. I grew up in Fort Wayne, and many of people, y'all gonna know this area, but on the corner of Lewis and Hannah, it used to be a liquor store called Atkins Liquor Store. Now, there would be a group of men every day, probably the same group of men. They would ask anybody, come in, you got a quarter, you got 35 cents, you got this, you got that. So they would pony up on, you know, whatever they got, but they shared everything that they got.
Yeah.
Now, we're well-to-do or well-off people, but we don't share like that. We don't have that goodness that they had. And we look at the people and not at the goodness. I'm not condoning the alcoholism, but they made sure no matter what the one had, everybody had. But we don't do that, and we're supposed to be good people. We don't make sure our brothers and sisters
Because we
good.
self-preserve. I mean,
Yes.
that's the biggest part about, you know, people that actually have money or actually are halfway well off. We so self-preserve where we forget, you know, about people that's not well off. We forget about helping. We forget about taking care of others. And it's crazy because when you take care of somebody else gonna end up taking care of you and what you ain't gave out. And people
Right.
don't even understand that concept.
Right.
Because kindness begets kindness.
Yes. I'm glad you said that. We do have another video to watch before we finish up the evening, so let's go ahead and take a look at that.
On the news, on the web, on the street, we're anything but unkind. Every day, we hear new stories of people trying to make the world a better place. And together, we can make the world that little bit kinder for all of us. It all starts with just one person, you. The thing about kindness is that it's just about the only thing in the world that doubles when you share it. And it's a fact, backed by science. Studies have shown that if you perform just one random act of kindness a day, you'll not only reduce your stress, anxiety, and depression, but your body is flooded with the same hormones that make you and the person you've helped calmer, healthier, and happier. Serotonin, which heals your wounds, helps you relax and makes you feel good. Endorphins, which reduce pain. And oxytocin, which reduces blood pressure and makes you feel more loving and loved. You'll both be more energized, feel less aches and pains, more confident, and could even live longer. And if other people see you helping someone else, they'll be filled with those same feel-good hormones, meaning they're significantly more likely to pay it forward. Like taking that extra moment to hold the elevator for someone, spotting a coffee for a stranger who's just a few cents short, giving your neighbor a hand with their groceries, even just smiling and meaning it. It doesn't take much, but it can make a huge difference for everyone. Those people you've helped will help other people, and those other people will help even more people. And those random acts of kindness can start a chain reaction that can spread across an entire community, a city, a country, and with enough of us, the world. Now, isn't that the world we all want? And it all starts with one.
That sounds really good.
It's good in theory. It sounds good on paper.
So we just don't have enough kind people to make it do what the
I
video.
think we have it.
We have more than enough.
So what's the
problem?
problem?
The problem is the only thing that get glorified is the bad, because that's drama. That's exciting. If I'm gonna ask you how much, and I love action movies. And I'm just gonna. I like to see things go boom. But if you see. If all you see is a bunch of kindness, in which, hey, I'm not saying it's wrong.
Yeah, you ain't gonna watch that movie long.
Exactly, because
Yeah.
it's boring.
Right.
Or if all you see on social media is somebody's doing something for kind, and there's no dramatic or drama behind it.
Yeah.
So that's one of the biggest things. And then on top of that, media wants that pushed out.
Yep.
Because if you push out kindness, now more kindness gonna come.
Right.
Now you're gonna expect kindness because of the simple fact you keep showing it, you keep showing it, you keep showing it. versus, I throw it here, throw it
Right.
over here, throw it. But I mean, it's just, and that's how media works.
So when I asked you, everyone, to think of something good, so if I would have said, think of something bad, like war, boom, 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 it's not because good things don't exist, because we all named something good.
Right.
It's because when you are so absorbed and infiltrated with what the media puts out, for example, New York Times, they put out an article in July of this year. Did you know that the murder rate in the U.S. is experiencing one of the biggest declines ever? I didn't,
Yeah.
because it hasn't made headlines.
You know, that,
But it hasn't made headlines because they don't want us to know this. What doesn't make headlines, which we can also call a form of violence or crime, is the fact that government corruption, corporate theft, what if they reported on that kind of crime like they do black on black crime, like they do crime anywhere else where they want you to know these people are committing the crimes over here? So that is why I asked the question about tell me something good.
Well, here's the other part about that. One of the biggest crime was COVID. Let's be realistic about it. The biggest crime in the last 3-4 years was the lie about COVID. So if I'm just gonna bring out some fake numbers. They said 2 million people died from it.
Mm-hmm.
But 500 million people had it.
Mm-hmm.
But they only gonna push the
deaths.
death.
Right.
So if I'm only gonna push the death, so just think about what they did to the mentals of the communities.
Yeah.
Because now you got so many people scared. They don't even want to. They didn't even want to touch nobody. They didn't want to be around nobody. They want to shut the whole world down for 2 million deaths when 500 million people had it.
Yeah.
So let's make it make sense. So that's one of the biggest hate crimes of all time.
Yeah, and the numbers are showing, the numbers are showing that.
Yeah. You know, you asked a question about finding the good, and E gave a great example. But here's another thing. As I was said earlier about teaching morality, we're no longer teaching sharing. We're no longer teaching kindness. The thing is, and Eric said it, it's every man for themselves. We're in self-preservation. So a lot of times kindness stops by the second or third person you hit, because it's not being taught anymore. It's not being shown anymore. And I don't just mean in the media. I mean our everyday lives.
Yep.
How many of us, and I'm guilty of this, but how many of us that see somebody on the street asking for $1, and in our heart, in our mind, I'm not giving them my money because they're going to go do something, blah, 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 blah. How many of us literally go down to the park and feed the homeless? How many of us, so if we are the ones that are supposed to show this kindness, why aren't we out showing this kindness? We have become sedentary and selfish within ourselves as a whole community and people.
It's funny that you say that, because Florida is one of the states that you cannot feed the homeless.
It's against the law to feed them.
It's against the law.
That says it all right
They're trying to do that in California too.
So just think about that. If a whole state saying you cannot feed this person because they are homeless, what kind of government do we actually have?
A government that, instead of wanted to feed that homeless man and make a whole law against
built a
it, is
jail
sending
for him.
all of our money.
Yeah, you'd rather send the money across the seas than versus, and like I say, and I say this all the time, it's so many homeless vets in the United States,
Right.
And now this man has served his country.
You can't give him a sandwich?
Yeah, he fell on hard times.
Right.
And I can't feed him.
And now there's a law if I give him a sandwich.
But some don't want it.
And I understand
they
some don't want it, but
Some
you
don't
can't.
want it. Only want money, or only want what they're asking for. So when because I know we give out to homeless people all the time, and sometimes they're like, "Don't you see the sign? I ask for money. I don't want food." Or they're a vet, and we have a huge VA hospital here, and I know a lot of people who can take them in, but they don't want to follow rules or they don't want to meet deadlines. So you extend kindness by offering, like Jill said, resources, but there's some people that just don't want it.
Because I understand some of the others backlash.
I would give you that. I would give you that too. But
Yeah.
but I think the root is that we as a people, and we always say this, we need to change our mindsets as a people, just do, as you said, Jill, just do what's good and see what happens after that.
Well, you
Right.
know, Michael Jackson said it best:
Starts with the man in the mirror.
all day long, twice on Sundays.
And we could keep talking about this. I do want to remind you first, tomorrow, Family Relevance at 8:30. So that kind of plays in line with what we're discussing this evening. Also, this coming Saturday, October the 21st,
Yes.
at 7 p.m.,
Yes.
we have something going on. I'll let Clarence talk about that.
We had the final phase of our seminar, our financial seminar presented by ONV. It will be at the summit at 7 down here, right here on Rudisill. We're asking you to pre-register. You can go to our website and see that, or you can register at info@ourneutralvoices.com. We ask you to register because seating is limited, but we can expand seating if we know how many people is going to be there. Last time they had pizza, so in the time before they had snacks, so you'll come get a good education and maybe a snack in between, but it's about credit.
Yes.
And understanding credit, the use of credit, and how credit affects you.
Right, something we all wish we knew a long time ago.
Right.
So now you have that opportunity. What if we just gave to people with no name in front of it? Just what if we gave to people? Others exist not for you to fix, but for you to serve. To solve the plague of violence anywhere, we need to address the core of the issue everywhere. So before we head out, we will turn it to Ian like we always say.
Always protect your mind.